I don't want a divorce. The only reason I could have my fun was because you were there. You're the only one I love. I won't do anything like this again. So please, forgive me. I don't need an apology now. My divorce from you is already decided. The only options left are either taking it to court or settling it. I'm sorry for the affair, but Penelope was the one who approached me first, so I couldn't help it. The one I truly love is Kiara. Penelope was just a fling. Edward, I'm divorcing you as well. You promised before marriage to never cheat on me again, but now to find you still engaging like a beast, it's disgusting. Don't ever appear before me again. I'm Stephen. I'm 30 years old and a section manager in the sales department of a major construction company. This is my 3rd year of marriage to my wife, Penelope, who is 2 years younger than me. I met Penelope at a party. She had just broken up with her boyfriend. When she talked about her ex, there was a slightly wistful look on her face that made me fall for her at first sight. Her ex-boyfriend was her superior at work. Apparently, he had left Penelope to marry the daughter of the company president, which eventually led to their breakup. She ended up quitting her job, finding it difficult to stay at the same company. Currently, she's unemployed. I thought this was my chance. As I listened to her story, I became more and more drawn to the way she gradually seemed to let go of the past. At the end of the party, we exchanged contact information. And that night, I immediately messaged her. Penelope, it was great talking with you today. I feel the same. Stephen, thanks for letting me vent. Things were off to a good start. We kept in touch. And before long, we started going out for meals and going on dates. A year later, we got married. It's been 3 years since our wedding, and our marriage is still going strong. Penelope became a housewife and has been taking care of everything at home flawlessly. I help out with chores whenever I have free time. Why don't you just relax on your days off? She says, but I enjoy doing household tasks together with her. There are no problems in our intimate life either. I've also been thinking it might be time to have kids. Though we don't do it every day, we often take baths together and still have a close relationship. Penelope's hobby is traveling. A few times a year, she enjoys going on short trips with her friends from college, staying for 1 or 2 nights. To show my appreciation for all the work she does around the house, I also take her on trips now and then. They're not too far away, but Penelope seems to enjoy them. This weekend, she has a trip planned with her college friends. It'll be a 2-night, 3-day getaway to a spa. The friend she introduced to me as a college friend was someone she had been close to since high school, and they occasionally have dinner together. She's friendly and left a good impression. Over the weekend, Penelope left for her trip as planned. I saw her off in good spirits. Have fun and take care, I said. Thank you. I'll see you later, she replied, flashing a carefree smile. Shortly after Penelope left, a package was delivered. I reached for a pen to sign a receipt, but it wasn't in its usual spot in the living room drawer. Normally, Penelope takes care of organizing small items like that, so I wasn't sure where to find it. I searched through several drawers, but couldn't find it. I felt bad about keeping the delivery person waiting. In the end, there was no pen in the living room. I thought it might be in Penelope's room, so I opened the drawer of her desk. There it was, a pen. Quickly signed the receipt and sent the delivery person on their way. When I went to put the pen back, I noticed a box of birth control pills and a box of condoms in the drawer. Both boxes were open, as if they'd been used a few times. Penelope and I don't use any form of contraception. We have a healthy, intimate life, and I've recently been wanting to start a family, something she agreed with as well. So why was she using birth control pills? Did she not really want kids? And those condoms, I've never used them. I remembered hearing that birth control pills could also help alleviate menstrual pain. So that might explain the pills. But what about the condoms? Those have nothing to do with menstrual pain. A feeling of unease washed over me. I decided to talk to Penelope about this once she returned. Hopefully, the condoms were just old, and she'd forgotten to throw them away. Later that evening, I went to a nearby grocery store. Normally, I'd eat out, but this time, I felt like cooking for myself. So I browsed the aisles, thinking about what to make. Then I spotted Penelope's female friend, the one she had introduced to me. She didn't notice me, but I was certain it was her. How could this be? I thought she was supposed to be on a spa trip with Penelope. What was she doing here? Completely confused, I left the store without buying anything. Who was Penelope really traveling with? Unwelcome thoughts began to flood my mind. Could she be having an affair? Was her friend covering for her? The more I thought about it, the more it seemed to fit. Had all those trips she took every year really been with a friend? Or had they been with someone else? I couldn't sleep that night. Thoughts swirled in my mind. How long had this been going on? How could I find out? And if it turned out to be true, what would I do? I must have dozed off at some point. My neck and head were aching. The neck pain was from sleeping in an awkward position on the couch, and the headache was likely from the alcohol. I couldn't go on living with this constant suspicion of infidelity. I needed clarity. First, I decided to observe Penelope. Though I couldn't watch her during the day because of work, I was fortunate enough not to have much overtime. When Penelope came home, I would carefully and calmly monitor her behavior. She returned 2 days later, appearing as calm and collected as always. I was more unsettled than she was, worried about whether I could act normally. One thing I hadn't noticed before was that Penelope never seemed to part with her smartphone. Once, I caught a glimpse of her screen from behind, just as a playful gesture, but she turned to me with a sharp glare. Don't look. Even married couples deserve some privacy, don't they? I remembered apologizing profusely, somewhat taken aback by her reaction. She eventually let it go, and I hadn't thought much of it until now. As I watched her more closely, I noticed she never put her smartphone down. If she wasn't using it, she kept it in her pocket or on her at all times, even bringing it into the shower, supposedly because it was waterproof. It's just for listening to music, she said, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't want me to see her screen. Besides, she never played music when we were in the bath together. She even placed her phone under her pillow at night, claiming it was for the vibrating alarm feature. Yet, I'd never heard it ring. Could it be that she didn't want me to know when she received calls? She used WhatsApp too, but I noticed her notifications were silent. Was she keeping in touch with someone discreetly? Over the following days, I continued observing Penelope, but found no concrete proof of infidelity. However, her attachment to her smartphone, always on silent, felt suspicious. The next day, I decided to consult a private investigator. I hoped there was nothing to worry about. After introducing myself, I met the head of the agency, Mr. Garcia. We'll handle the investigations outside of your home, he explained, but we can't interfere inside. I'll need your cooperation. How about installing a hidden camera in your home to monitor what Penelope does when you're at work? Living with the suspicion of Penelope's infidelity is, to be honest, exhausting. If nothing came of it, I would finally be at ease. So I accepted Mr. Garcia's suggestion. I rented a few hidden cameras from the detective agency. Over the weekend, when Penelope went shopping, I installed the cameras in the living room, the bedroom, and Penelope's private room. I set up the data to record on my laptop, which Penelope couldn't access since I use it for work. Naturally, it was linked to my smartphone too. Now I could check in on the house any time during work hours. For a few days, I reviewed the hidden camera footage, but saw nothing suspicious. Then, a week later, in the morning, Penelope was doing her usual chores. But in the afternoon, someone visited. She showed him to the living room and offered him coffee. It was a man I had never seen before, but something about their seating was strange. Normally, people sit facing each other during conversations, but Penelope and the man sat side by side on a love seat. The cameras I rented from the detective agency could record audio as well. "I think we should end this," the man said. "My wife's been in a bad mood lately, and I think she may have noticed something." "What are you afraid of?" "Did she say something?" Penelope asked. "She hasn't said anything specific about infidelity, but she's been acting distant. It's all in your head." "I've been careful too. Steven's so oblivious. He even told me to enjoy myself before our recent trip. Regardless, I can't risk it. Let's stop seeing each other for a while. If we can't see each other for a while, then we should enjoy today," Penelope replied, clinging to him. She placed her hand on his thigh, stroking it. Then, she took off her skirt and climbed onto his lap. The man wordlessly put his hands on her hips. After a while of flirting on the couch, they got up and disappeared from the frame. The next scene was in the master bedroom, the very bed Penelope and I shared, and they were both naked. This was definitive proof of her infidelity. I couldn't watch anymore. The disgust made me feel nauseous. The two of them were in bed, my bed, with Penelope. I turned my eyes away from the smartphone and took out my earbuds. While I was working, Penelope and the other person were engaging in intimate activities in our bed. And this wasn't the first time. I was sure of it. Without knowing, I had been sleeping with Penelope on the same bed she used with him. We had talked about wanting children and stopped using protection, making love as if nothing was wrong. But Penelope had been taking birth control, not because she didn't want my child, but to avoid getting pregnant by him. Though I looked away once, I checked my smartphone again to confirm the evidence of her affair. What I saw was Penelope, in an intense state I had never witnessed with me. Their animalistic act had repeated several times. A closer look showed that the man didn't even use protection. Watching Penelope's demeanor, I was convinced she hadn't been satisfied with me. Seeing her use this affair to fulfill her desires crushed me. I couldn't do this anymore. I had enough evidence. I would divorce Penelope. There was no reason to stay married after this. That evening, I texted Penelope that I'd be away on a business trip for a few days and didn't return home. Last-minute business trips had happened before, so Penelope didn't suspect anything. Even though I planned to divorce her, I wasn't going to let them get away with this easily. Even if I went home, I couldn't stay calm, knowing those images would replay in my mind. Just shouting at her or confronting her about the affair wouldn't satisfy me. Both she and her lover would suffer consequences they'd never forget. With this in mind, I contacted the detective agency and visited them. "She's been cheating. Here's the proof," I said, showing Mr. Garcia the footage on my smartphone. "This confirms the affair. I'm truly sorry for putting you through this, Stephen. Leave the rest of the evidence collection to us." Mr. Garcia seemed regretful about suggesting the hidden cameras in the first place. "Thank you. I'll leave everything in your hands. Please reach out if there's any update. I'm set on divorce, so any additional information, no matter how small, would be helpful." I left a detective agency feeling more determined. A few days later, Mr. Garcia contacted me. We've captured photos of the two entering a hotel together. I returned to the agency. There were photos of them entering the hotel arm in arm, and later embracing in Edward's car after they left. The detective had also identified the man. His name was Edward, Penelope's former boss. It appeared their relationship had continued even after our marriage. I recalled meeting him at a party where he had bragged about ending things with Penelope to marry the president's daughter at his own company. So he was married as well. During the investigation, we came across another detective. It appears Edward's wife also suspected him of infidelity and had hired someone to investigate. Mr. Garcia explained that another detective connected with the agency had also been looking into Edward's actions. They also investigated the woman who Penelope claimed was her college friend. She turned out to be a friend from university, someone Penelope partied with, and they'd covered for each other's affairs. I spoke directly with her. It seems they've coordinated stories countless times before. I warned her that if Penelope found out about the investigation, I'd report her cheating to her current boyfriend. It seemed Penelope had been involved with multiple men at once in the past, with her friend helping to cover it up for self-preservation. A twisted mentality, to say the least. With Edward's identity and address confirmed, I decided to reach out to his wife. We met at a cafe. After introducing ourselves, she told me her name was Kiara, and that she was the only daughter, and how her father was the president of Edward's company. Edward and my wife, Penelope, have been having an affair. Here's the evidence, I told her, frustrated. Despite my anger, I knew Kiara was not to blame. Since she wasn't divorced yet, I approached her carefully. I'm terribly sorry. My investigation also confirmed Edward's affair with Penelope. I have evidence on my end, too. Please, have a look. We reviewed the evidence together. Most of it was the same, though the smartphone footage was unique to mine. For a while, we sat in silence. Finally, I broke it. A few weeks ago, Penelope went on a trip with friends, leaving the house. How about on your side? Edward told me he was going away for a 3-day golf tournament. My investigation, however, found that there was no such event. I believe they met up. It turned out Edward had often made similar excuses to stay overnight when Penelope went on trips. Edward cheated on me while we were engaged. The other woman was Penelope. Kiara explained that Penelope had seduced Edward during their engagement, though she'd forgiven him after he promised never to see Penelope again. The affair had continued. Penelope had originally claimed to me that she left her job after being dumped by Edward when she found out he was set to marry the company president's daughter. But the truth was that Penelope had pursued Edward even while he was engaged. Eventually, his behavior got him exposed, and he had to leave his position voluntarily. I've already decided to file for divorce. What will you do, Kiara? I'll be filing for divorce as well. I forgave him once, but not a second time. He'll be out of the house immediately. So, if we're both moving forward with divorce, when shall we confront them? We should coordinate, or they may try to align their stories. Shall we do it on the same day? I'll leave the arrangements to you. Then next Sunday, I'll book a hotel room. Could you arrange for Edward to come? I want to corner them. I'll bring a lawyer to the meeting, but you could bring whoever you want as well. I'll bring my lawyer as well. And I'll also be bringing the president, my father. And so, the planning for our divorce confrontations began. We made sure neither of the unfaithful parties would suspect anything. There was one unexpected outcome, though it wasn't a bad one. I told Kiara that I no longer felt comfortable living in my current apartment and was planning to find a new one. She offered to introduce me to a property owned by her company, and what's more, there would be no initial fees. After parting with Kiara, I went to my in-laws' house and informed Penelope's parents that I would be divorcing her. I explained the whole situation and told them I'd be seeking compensation in the divorce proceedings. Penelope's father, Brian, was in disbelief, but after watching the video on my smartphone, his face turned red with anger, while her mother, Anna, broke down in tears. What Penelope did is unforgivable. She's disowned. Do whatever you need to, Stephen. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Stephen. I don't know where we went wrong in raising her. Brian was furious, and Anna was too devastated to stand. It was a relief to know they had a sense of decency and were deeply apologetic, even though they weren't to blame. I plan to settle everything next Sunday. Until then, could you keep this from Penelope? Of course, we'll cooperate. We'll do anything to help you get justice, Brian said. I left the in-laws' house with their support. The following Sunday, I invited Penelope out for dinner. I'd also booked a hotel room afterward, telling her we could relax there. She seemed thrilled, enjoying dinner, while I tried to keep my cool. The expensive meal tasted like nothing to me, considering what lay ahead. Once we finished eating, we headed to the hotel. At the front desk, I received a room key, and we made our way to the suite. I unlocked the door and led Penelope inside. She looked puzzled. A man was already seated in the room. "Who's that?" Penelope asked, hiding slightly behind me. "That's my lawyer," I replied in a voice so dry I barely recognized it as my own, devoid of any emotion. Penelope, still confused, remained behind me. "Have a seat," I said, indicating the chair across from us. Hesitantly, she sat down, clearly unsettled. The reason I booked this hotel today was to have a conversation, specifically about divorce. "What are you talking about, divorce?" she asked, sounding incredulous. "You've been cheating, haven't you? And not just for a short time, but ever since before our marriage, with your ex-boyfriend." "What are you talking about? I told you my ex dumped me to marry the company president's daughter. There's no way I'd have an affair with someone like that," she shouted back. "I already have all the evidence." With that, I handed Penelope a stack of photos. She froze for a moment, then said, "These are well-made composite photos, but they're not of me." Feigning ignorance, she continued, "I had these photos taken by a private detective agency. They used film, so they can't be edited or forged." At that moment, there was a knock on the door. "Hang on, we have some guests." In walked Edward, Kiara, and her father, Mr. Anderson. Shortly afterward, Kiara's attorney also entered. "Now that everyone's here, let's continue." Edward and Penelope looked pale as ghosts. Of course, Penelope knew Kiara and was familiar with Mr. Anderson, the company president. I said, "No need for introductions, you're all familiar with each other. I'm divorcing Penelope, and Kiara is divorcing him. That's what this discussion is about. Stephen, I know these people, but I'm not having an affair. This is all a big mistake. Kiara, I know Penelope, but it's over. I haven't seen her since before the wedding, as I promised. I'm not cheating." One by one, I began presenting the evidence. On the days Penelope went on trips, Edward also stayed out overnight, citing reasons like golf competitions. Photos showed Penelope leaving her apartment, getting into Edward's car, and them heading to a hotel together. There was even a picture of them embracing in his car. I explained each piece of evidence. Penelope, who had been silent, then said, "Edward staying out the night I went on a trip is purely a coincidence. The time I got into his car to go to the hotel was because I felt sick, and he was just helping me out. That photo of us hugging, it only looks that way because of the angle." Kiara interrupted, Penelope, no one is that unlucky with coincidences. Every time you went on a trip, Edward happened to stay out, and Edward just said he hadn't seen you since before our wedding. Yet now you claim he was comforting you in his car. How do you explain that? Edward could only look down, unable to respond. The woman you introduced as Penelope's friend has also testified about your trips. She even provided an audio recording of you asking her to cover for you. That's a lie. I wasn't cheating. I might have joked about it with her, but it's just audio. This is all just a big misunderstanding. Let's end this already. Is that all you have to say? Then how do you explain this? I presented the final piece of evidence. I connected my smartphone and displayed the data on the room's TV screen. This video had already been viewed by me, Kiara, and both attorneys. It was Mr. Anderson's first time seeing it, but he had been informed by Kiara that it contained shocking footage, the evidence of the affair itself. Even Penelope couldn't say anything in response. At this point, the lawyers stepped in. My attorney said, "So we're in agreement that the divorce is due to the affair?" "Correct." Kiara's attorney added, "If you refuse, we will have to go to court. With this amount of evidence, there's no doubt we would win. Considering the costs involved, it might be better for you to settle." After a while, Penelope finally spoke up. "I don't want a divorce. The only reason I could have fun was because of Stephen. I only love Stephen. I promise I won't do this again, so please forgive me." She said this while deeply apologizing. Edward chimed in, "I'm sorry for the affair, but it was Penelope who initiated it. I only love you, Kiara. Penelope was just a fling. I don't need an apology now. My divorce with Penelope is a done deal. We have two options, go to court or settle. Edward, I will also be divorcing you. You promised not to see her again before the marriage, yet you've been going on like a beast. Don't ever show your face in front of me again." Despite their pleas and apologies, I made it clear that any further negotiations would go through our attorneys. At this point, Mr. Anderson, who had been silent until now, dropped a bombshell. "Edward, it seems you've taken advantage of being married to the president's daughter to do as you please. I've received complaints from accounting about discrepancies in expenses, and upon investigating, we found that you had been embezzling funds. You will be held responsible for this." What a blow. After that, I left the negotiations to the two lawyers and exited the room with Kiara and Mr. Anderson. Later, the two of them were hit with a $30K compensation claim for the divorce proceedings, totaling $60K. Additionally, I made Penelope buy out the apartment we had shared, adding another $80K to the claims. Furthermore, since Penelope had misappropriated our shared savings, I added a claim for another $20K, bringing the total to $160K. Kiara also claimed half of the misappropriated savings from Edward, which amounted to $40K. The house was considered Kiara's personal property, so he was asked to vacate immediately. Now, Edward was already in debt with quite an amount, but on top of that, he was sued by the president for embezzlement. Although he received a suspended sentence, he was sentenced to prison. With a criminal record, he was also fired from the company. The damages he owed to the company amounted to $60K. So now he was $160K in debt. Both of them sought help from their parents and relatives, but since I had proactively shown everyone the photos and videos, no one was willing to help. A former housewife, along with a disgraced ex-employee with a criminal record, found themselves seeking loans from financial companies to repay their debts, but no reputable company would lend to them. Instead, they had to borrow from loan sharks. Since the loan collectors were quite strict, Penelope ended up working at a factory as a live-in worker. It seems she also took on nighttime work, using her body to make ends meet. However, her night job was discovered by her company, leading to her dismissal. I heard rumors that she had become exclusively involved in night work, introduced to her by a financial company to pay off her debts, given her apparent excess of sexual desire that led her to cheat. This line of work might be her calling. However, it wasn't in a high-end establishment, and she seemed to be suffering from sexually transmitted diseases. I had no intention of helping her, though. Meanwhile, Edward was unable to find a job and was reportedly working on a fishing boat in the northern seas, catching crabs. It seemed he was toiling under harsh conditions, where a storm could easily throw him overboard and make survival nearly impossible, all to repay his debts. As for me, I'm living in an apartment that Kiara introduced me to. It's a property owned by Kiara's company and is much nicer than the apartment I used to live in. The rent is almost the same as before. Although I was feeling down after the affair scandal, I often met with Kiara. Perhaps there's a sense of solidarity between those who have been cheated on. We would go out for meals or have drinks at a local bar, laughing and venting about our ex-spouses. Mr. Anderson was also considerate, and I enjoyed going camping with Kiara, engaging in our shared hobbies. I don't know what the future holds, but I hope to lead a peaceful life like everyone else. Ideally, I would like to do this with Kiara.
The moment I had been dreading finally arrived. My husband, who has tormented me endlessly, and his ever-critical mother. I can't even count the number of tears I've shed and the times I've been hurt. Despite it all, I've held on, trying my best to fulfill my role as a wife and homemaker. But my husband? He never seemed to care about my struggles. He even decided to move his mother into our home without consulting me. Is your mom all moved in? Of course, she is. But here's the thing. Yeah, she's settled in. In fact, I just finished moving back to my parents' home. Wait, what? Your parents' place? His voice over the phone was tinged with panic. I could tell he hadn't seen this coming. But don't think it ends here. I owe you for all the pain you've caused me. My name is Eleanor, a 44-year-old homemaker. I met Raymond at a party when I was 20, and we instantly clicked. Just 3 months later, he confessed his feelings, and we started dating. A year later, as I turned 21, he asked, "Will you marry me?" A year after our marriage, I became pregnant, and our first son was born. I thought I would have the fairy tale life I had dreamt of during my school days. But life wasn't that simple. Hey, is dinner ready yet? Did you make the bed? That's what Raymond always says when he comes home from work. I sometimes wonder if he thinks of me as just a maid. I'm sorry, I got a bit tied up. I'll get everything ready now. Seriously? Don't you think about how tired I am after work? I deal with so much stress to provide for our family. And remember, I'm a manager. A manager. Whenever something doesn't go his way, Raymond starts ranting about being a manager and makes snide remarks. He wasn't like this when we first got married. People often ask if I'm okay with how he behaves. Of course, I'm not. It's unbearable. But honestly, I do appreciate that he brings in the money. Thanks to Raymond's good salary, we've never had financial troubles. But imagine if I challenged him wrongly and he retorted, "You're defying me? Fine, I'll stop contributing to the house then." I wouldn't know what to do. So, even if he says a bit much sometimes, I try to tolerate it, though I wish I could say it's always easy. But with the way Raymond's been acting lately, even that tolerance is strained. Like the other day, he ranted, "Why aren't the clothes dry? You didn't even use the dryer, did you? I told you before. I like my clothes feeling cozy. They need to be fluffy from the dryer." I had a lot on my plate, with shopping and chores. I didn't get to the dryer.
That's not the point. I work hard every day, but what about you? Aren't you a homemaker? Shouldn't you have time for at least this?
Raymond never does household chores. He believes that's the wife's job. Just because I'm a homemaker doesn't mean I always have free time. I wish he'd help out a little. It was the same when our child was born. I'm busy with work, I'm tired. Always some excuse. So I've done all the household and childcare duties by myself. But there's another source of stress. My mother-in-law.
Eleanor, did you clean this properly? And what are you planning for dinner tonight? Surely not some takeaway.
Whenever my mother-in-law visits, she's always like this. She constantly looks for my mistakes and never hesitates to criticize. Both mother and son act similarly, like they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And today, she started again.
Eleanor, how many times have I told you? Clean the house every day to make it comfortable for my son. Why don't you? Are you ignoring my advice on purpose? This is why I was against my son marrying someone like you. You can't even manage the house properly. Just looking at you infuriates me.
Constant criticism from Raymond and my mother-in-law, and I endure it all with a smile. But there's one thing I just can't overlook, mother-in-law's gambling habit. Whenever she has the chance, she's playing poker, slot machines, roulette, or craps. She just loves to gamble. And she spends all her money in the blink of an eye. Worse still, she laughs about it. And Raymond just laughs along with her. Hold on a second. Whose money do you think you're using? The money mother-in-law spends on gambling comes from our household savings. I've brought this up to Raymond multiple times, but I'm just as upset about it. Hey, could you tell Mom? I mean, I could tell her, but if I do, I think she'll be really shocked. Plus, I'm so busy with work, I don't think I can discuss it calmly. He always comes up with these excuses and never acts. So, I decide to convey Raymond's message to mother-in-law for him.
Why can't a mother use the money her son earns? He's told me I can use as much as I want.
She retorted. Thinking that Raymond would back me up, I say.
Raymond feels the same way. Could you please stop using our household savings without asking? Right, honey?
But Raymond interjects.
What are you talking about? This household savings is for all three of us. Excluding only Mom is wrong. Sorry, Mom. Don't listen to her. She's lying. You can use the money as you always have.
This is how Raymond always changes his story depending on who he's talking to. Moreover, he started blaming me for mother-in-law's gambling habits, saying they worsened after we got married 3 months ago. That's just not true. Even before our marriage, mother-in-law was gambling frequently. Whenever I went shopping, I'd see her coming out of the local poker club. But when I bring this up to Raymond, he accuses me of lying and then ignores the issue. He'll never see his mother's true colors. Their snide remarks keep coming, and I'm getting fed up.
Oh, look at the time. I should get going.
Wait, Mom. You didn't forget about our plan, right? How are the preparations?
Yes, they're well underway.
What plan? What are these two up to? I'm taken aback by Raymond's sudden question and try to figure out their scheme. With that, mother-in-law, humming a tune, leaves in high spirits. At last, she's gone. I think to myself. I look over, and Raymond is grinning from ear to ear, waving until his mother's out of sight. A week later, I finally understood the meaning behind Raymond's words about preparations.
Have a good day.
Slam. As usual, Raymond leaves for work without responding to my farewell. While most couples would greet each other with smiles, that warmth is long gone between us. I gaze out the window and see a neighboring family, looking so happy as they walk by. I remember the days when my son and I used to go for walks just like that. Lost in my thoughts in the morning, the doorbell rings. Yes, who is it? Oh, it's you, mother-in-law.
Wait, where's Raymond?
I wasn't expecting her to show up today, especially not this early in the morning. Oh, something came up at his work, so he had to go in unexpectedly.
I see.
Why on earth is she here? She's not expecting to have breakfast with me, is she? No way she would think of doing that, or would she? A flurry of thoughts about mother-in-law raced through my mind. Then she says,
Why are you standing there looking so blank? Get things ready.
"Ready for what?"
I haven't eaten anything since this morning. I'm hungry, so make me breakfast. And make sure this doesn't happen again.
What does she mean by from now on? The words "get ready" that Raymond mentioned earlier in mother-in-law's from now on phrase make me uneasy. For some reason, I had a terrible feeling about this. Feeling anxious about their comments, mother-in-law pressures me to make breakfast. I apologize and start preparing the meal. Meanwhile, mother-in-law observes me, not even blinking. More like monitoring than observing, maybe? It's hard to do. Under her piercing gaze, I silently and earnestly prepare the breakfast. Suddenly, mother-in-law says,
It's pitiful to think my son eats this poorly presented food every day. It looks terrible and probably tastes just as bad. I'd love to know how you manage to cook so poorly.
She ridicules me, mockingly laughing and complaining. Why do I have to hear all this first thing in the morning? What was supposed to be a pleasant morning felt as if it had turned into a downpour. Sorry for the wait.
It took you long enough. How much time do you need for a meal like this? Maybe you should attend a cooking class? Then you might be able to cook something decent. Though, even then, it'd be like getting a D instead of an F.
Having a meal alone with my mother-in-law for the first time. Seeing her stern face while eating, I lost my appetite, and the meal I put so much effort into tasted bland. Suddenly, my mother-in-law set down her fork, stating,
I don't even feel like eating this. Clear it away.
I'm sorry. I just can't take this anymore. I wish she'd leave sooner. But little did I know my wish would be shattered in no time. Ring ring. Excuse me for a moment.
Hey, Mom's there, right? Let me talk to her.
Handing the phone to my mother-in-law after Raymond's request, she exclaimed,
You told me we'd discuss that matter, making me come over so early. Now, you say you're at work? What's going on? Sorry, something came up. I'll be back before noon. Just relax till then. Hurry up, being with her is just stressful.
She ended the call with Raymond and returned the phone to me with a slight throw. Trying to ask what Raymond had said, she just glared and told me he'd be back before noon. 3 hours later, Raymond returned home and immediately asked her,
Sorry, Mom. So, are you ready?
Yes, just need to pack my things. Pack? What? Before I could process, Raymond dropped a bombshell.
From now on, Mom will live here too. What?
It was a shock. I always thought it would just be the two of us living here, but now my mother-in-law will be moving in too. The mere thought of my mother-in-law coming here terrifies me. Living a life constantly getting snide remarks from Raymond and my mother-in-law every day? I just can't bear the thought of it.
Mom, I'll help you move on my next day off.
That would be helpful. But don't bring her along. We don't need someone useless.
Don't worry. It'll just be me.
The shocking twist left my mind blank, unable to process anything. That evening, Raymond and his mom went out for dinner. Alone, I pondered our future. How would I coexist with the two of them? Was I just supposed to endure everything? Or was there another way? The same thoughts kept replaying, but no answers came. Lost in my despair, I felt tears spilling when suddenly, ring ring. A phone call. Wiping away my tears, I answered and the voice on the other end was, "Oh." A call from the most unexpected person. The familiar voice echoed in my ear when I picked up the phone.
Mom, it's been a while.
Eric, it has indeed. Have you been well?
Yeah, I'm good. Granddad and Granny are also doing well. We're all getting along.
It was my son, Eric, on the other end. After graduating from college, Eric took a job at a company near our family home. Because his work was close, he had chosen to live with his grandparents, away from us. When will you come to visit? It's been years since you last did. The two of them really want to see you. I'm sorry. I've been so busy and just couldn't make it to the family home. Busy with what? Isn't it because of Dad and Grandmother? He hit the nail on the head. The reason I couldn't visit was indeed because of those two. Raymond didn't like the idea of me visiting my parents. As a homemaker, Raymond only sees me as a mere housekeeper. He has this ridiculous notion that I should always be taking care of the home. And his mother-in-law, shared the same view. She too only saw me as a convenient housekeeper, always expecting me to tend to the house. So, I felt trapped, unable to leave and just living within the confines of our home. It felt like I was a bird caged up. Eric knew this. He once visited this house and remembered the words Raymond and mother-in-law had hurled at me.
Aren't you a homemaker? Then you need to do your household duties properly. A housekeeper who can't even do chores is useless anywhere. Be grateful you're even needed here by us.
It was then that Eric first realized the treatment I was getting from the two of them.
I thought as much.
I'm sorry for making you worry.
Listen, Mom, I have an idea.
Then, Eric suggested something unexpected. It was something I hadn't ever considered.
Really? Are you serious? Of course. It's to help you, Mom.
While it might seem obvious, Eric's words became the lifeline I needed from my hellish life. From the next day, while Raymond was at work, I started implementing what Eric had told me to do. Being cautious not to let Raymond notice and always vigilant for the often unexpectedly appearing mother-in-law. There were a few close calls.
Hey, have you been up to something lately?
Why do you ask?
Mom mentioned it. She said you've been acting differently. You're not cheating on me, are you?
Last time, I was saved by Raymond's ridiculous misunderstanding, but I can't underestimate my mother-in-law. She's sharp. I need to be more careful and not let my guard down around her. Still, it's clear that Raymond doesn't really care about me. Well, that's fine. It actually makes things easier for me. In fact, it's a relief. I can't wait to see how they'll react to what comes next. Ring ring.
Mom, how far along are you with the preparations?
I've got everything ready and have made a lot of progress. Now, we just wait for the day.
Speaking of which, do you know when Grandmother is moving in?
She's moving in the day after tomorrow. I overheard them talking about it when they were in a good mood. I have to make sure they pay for everything they've done to me. The climax is approaching. The morning my mother-in-law is set to arrive.
Don't slack off just because I'm not around. Also, help Mom with the luggage when she gets here. And keep the house clean. Mom said she won't forgive even a speck of dust.
I understand. After seeing Raymond off, I start the final preparations. Then, the doorbell rings.
Good morning, Mom.
Eric, I'm sorry, but can you help me?
Of course. Let's get this done quickly before Grandmother arrives.
With Eric's help, we finalize everything. And 30 minutes later.
All right, let's go.
I hop into Eric's car, and we head to a certain place. Ring ring.
Hello?
The moment has arrived. Raymond and mother-in-law have tormented me endlessly. I don't even know how many tears I've shed or how much pain I've endured. Yet I've persisted, trying my best as a homemaker. But Raymond never seemed to care about my struggles. And he decided to move in with his mother without discussing it with me.
Is Mom all settled in?
Of course, she is. But guess what?
Yes, she's all settled. And I've just finished moving back to my parents' home. What? Back to your parents?
Raymond's panic was evident, even over the phone. But that's not the end of it. He's got a lot coming his way. I delivered the final blow to Raymond.
Today's the day we get divorced. The divorce papers, already filled out with your name, are on the table. When you get home, all you need to do is sign and take them to the courthouse. Just to make sure there's no delay, I've arranged for a lawyer to accompany you. The lawyer will also discuss the division of our assets.
Raymond, taken aback, blurted out.
Wait, what are you talking about? Divorce? Are you kidding me? No matter what you say, it won't change my mind. Oh, by the way, we don't have a single cent in our savings. What? That can't be true. I've been contributing every month. Yes, but your dear mother gambled all that money away. We have nothing left. What? I suggest you and your mother figure things out. Good luck.
Right after ending the call with Raymond, his mother showed up at the house, arms laden with bags, enthusiastically ringing the doorbell. I didn't answer. Infuriated, she yelled,
Hey! Open up! How long are you going to keep me waiting out here? Open the damn door! You wretched woman! Get out here!
Her screaming and swearing at the front door attracted the attention of a passersby. They suspected her of causing trouble and called the police. In just a few minutes, officers arrived and took her away. About 30 minutes later, a distraught Raymond, unable to focus on his work after hearing the news, rushed home. But I was nowhere to be seen. The only thing waiting for him was the divorce paper on the table. The sight left him completely speechless, and he just sat down, devastated. 2 hours later, the lawyer arrived and accompanied a despondent Raymond to the courthouse to submit the divorce papers. At last, our divorce was finalized. The next day, after being released from police custody, Raymond's mother came home, only to find her son deeply affected by the shock of the divorce. Although Raymond had planned to live with her, the trauma of the divorce made him take a leave from work, and a month later, he resigned. With no income, he had to sell the new house they had just built. They managed to get by with the money from the sale, but his gambling-addicted mother depleted it all. Rumor has it they now live like homeless people in a nearby park. After the divorce, I began to live peacefully at my parents' house. The money from the sale of the house came to me as well. With that money, I commented,
This place is lovely.
Yeah, it's a popular resort hotel these days. I was on vacation with my family. Finally free from the nightmare, I could live my life on my own terms. That joy is unparalleled.